was, I believe, 2006. It was about 20 years ago when I had one of those aha moments. And if you've ever had one of those, you know what I'm talking about. See, at the time, I was 45 years old. I'm 65 now. And I had basically read what I believed was every self-help book that was ever written from, the How Time Began to Think and Grow Rich, everything in between, mental, physical, business. And at 45, I was looking in the mirror and I said, I have a successful CPA practice. I have the family I always wanted. I have the white picket fence, the 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 German Shepherd dog that I grew up with that I always wanted, but something was just missing. And then I read a book that just turned everything upside down or right side up, I would like to think. And it was called The of Getting Rich. And I realized that I had been doing everything inside out because all those other books, everything that I read, and it's not anything about the books. It was how I looked at it, how I brought it in, how I interpreted it. And sometimes, things happen when they're supposed to happen. And what Wallace Wattles did, the author of The Science of Getting Rich, which is a really easy read, was tell me, show me that it's not what's happening on the outside, it's what happens on the inside. It's not what happens on the outside, it's how you react. It's what you give to the universe. And a couple of months ago, I was fortunate enough to land a new client, very perky, positive client who did something that most clients don't do. She was very responsive. So I appreciated her right away. Said, you're a great client. You respond to everything we ask you for, and that's a gift. And what she does as a profession is she's a social worker. She's a therapist. So I put her into a box with all the other therapist clients that I have. My cousin is a therapist, and I have a great respect for people in that profession. They're needed. Okay. Uh, but something happened, and I don't believe anything happens by chance. There's no coincidences. She sent me an email, and I looked at the link to her website, and I said, "Oh my God, I didn't know you do all this stuff." And I said, "I need you to be on my podcast." I didn't say it to her directly. I said it to the universe. So I sent her an email and right away she agreed to it. So it's my pleasure and my honor to introduce you to Tara Maddie Larchemar. Did I no, I minced that, right?
Yeah, Lechminar is the last name.
Okay, so I like to call it Tara. And
Mhm.
just so you know, if this is your first time listening to this podcast, it's called How to Win Big at Business. It's all about, helping self-employed professionals, which Tara actually happens to be, a self-employed professional. And we're going to talk, we're going to have the regular conversation that I have with all of my guests. And at the end of it, you're going to say, wow, this really helped my business. I guarantee you. So, Tara, let's start with who are you and how did you wind up where you are
Good
in a
morning,
few
Joe.
words?
Yes. Good morning, everyone else who is also listening. I have been in the mental health field for close to 20 years, and it literally started with in high school taking a psychology class. And after that, literally learning about the brain is really what set the pathway for me. And all my jobs after that really led me to it. I am currently in private practice, have been since 2020. I am certified in EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and hypnosis. A lot of my work is working with adults, anyone who's struggling in relationships, particularly in men in like high functioning corporate roles, who are in relationships and finding that they do really good at work, but at home that they find that they're kind of struggling and kind of figuring out like what's going on with my wife or my partner here that like we're feeling disconnected because I'm doing great everywhere else in all other aspects. So that's kind of like the gist of pretty much where I ended up. School and then continued with my master's, got licensed in the state of Massachusetts, and working on my own now.
So, okay, so I have a ton of questions. Let's start. So that was a great summary. When I said do it like in a couple of words, I was actually joking, but you did a great job. And so I get the whole you were in school and took a psychology class because, that was like my third minor in college. I love psychology. And actually, you want to know something? That helped me more in my accounting career than my accounting courses. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I realized I said I'm dealing with people and their emotion, and
Yeah.
and that's what drives people, right? So, what made you? Because this is really about entrepreneurs. So, most people, like my cousin, okay, she basically owns a job, and there's nothing wrong with that. She's a therapist, she's self-employed. For tax purposes, she has to be a corporation. But
Mm-hmm.
you've gone beyond that. You've gone way beyond that. So, what's driving you? Because you could just sit in your home office, do the telework, right? Hook up with all the insurance companies and just, rake in the cash. And there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with that. But now you're doing let me just give some people because I'm on your website and
Mm-hmm.
what is it? Healinginnerlight.com.
Yes.
So if you're listening, you got to go to this website because I've seen probably millions of websites. This is really spectacular. You do holistic counseling,
Yes.
hypnosis therapy, Reiki therapy,
Mm-hmm.
virtual therapy. I don't know what some of those things are. EMDR therapy,
Uh-huh.
career counseling, life transition and counseling, anxiety. Is there anybody out there that doesn't suffer from anxiety?
Oh,
And
no, everyone does in some shape or
self
form.
self-esteem therapy. And another one that I want to talk to you at another time, trauma counseling, because I just did one of my friends, client mentors. He's a, TBI expert.
Mm.
Okay,
Oh,
I
wow.
want to connect you with him. But how do you go from a psychology course and a
Hmm.
licensed therapist to hypnotherapy?
Yeah, absolutely. I recognize that some of the Western practices doesn't really resonate with everybody. So I am first generation Indo-Guyanese. We do in Hindu practicing as well. So a lot of my upbringing, my values come from Hinduism and more of the Eastern practices. So that's where Reiki comes in. I also like tapping into the subconscious mind of really hitting that meditative trance, and that's where hypnosis comes in. So I don't really subscribe to like the medications and the psychiatrists. I love my psychiatrist people that I work with and definitely send in referrals, however, because it does work for some people. But with the people that I work with, I find that they don't want to go the medication route. They want to do more of the holistic practices. They want to be able to kind of really tap into what does it mean to slow down because life always moves so fast and we all have roles that we have to fulfill. So hypnosis really gives them that chance to really relax the body and really tap into the subconscious mind and help them figure out what are the messages that they need for themselves to be their authentic self. With Reiki, it's all about balancing the chakras. What does it mean for you to truly be aligned and think with clarity instead of all of this noise and all of this external inputs that we take in every single day, like social media, like the TV shows that we're watching, like any other advertisements. It's just really about sitting down, being quiet for a moment, and really listening to what does your true soul want for you. So that's how I honestly have been doing that practice since childhood because that's what I grew up with and found that that is something that really does work even well into my late 30s into 40s that it's a practice that is so missed and truly not taught in school or even in some homes?
Yeah, well, I have, and I'm a fan of Napoleon Hill, and he wrote a book that was very, very controversial. I actually forget the name of it, but he talks about what's being taught in schools, and I'm talking about Western schools.
Mm.
And it was so controversial, his family asked him not to publish it.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
then when he passed away, and they finally published it. I forgot the name of it. I think it's like Conversations with the Devil or something like. But it talked about that, and you mentioned about the Western culture, and I agree with that because unfortunately, in the United States, we became a culture of, oh, where does it hurt? I'll give you a pill for that, right? Or I'll give you
Right.
a shot, a vaccine. And one of the things that the science of getting rich told me is it doesn't come from the outside, right? It comes from the
Exactly.
inside. For me,
Mhm.
it sent me on a journey of self-awareness. So I had to start figuring it out, and I did it a lot of different ways. And I believe that you could probably enlighten me about more ways. I had to figure out like what drives me, what makes me make my decisions. And it was eye-opening, and it's really changed my life. It's really changed my life. So where do you start with people?
I start with the typical good old asking a bunch of questions about their history, their upbringing, kind of like what any other therapist would do. So, the first couple of sessions that when working with me is all about gathering their information, making sure that we're a good fit. Do we align in our values? Do you find that like I would be someone who can help you in your journey? So the first few sessions, really exploring your cultural beliefs, where you're trying to go, where do you see yourself in like 5 to 10 years, and then we work backwards, childhood stuff all the way up to what brought you up to this point today. Sometimes it really is just a breaking point, and people just want to focus on the breaking point, but I emphasize that knowing all of the history really is important because those experiences shape who you are.
So you just mentioned something that it's really because everybody says, where do you see yourself 10 years from now? And
Mm,
that's such a hard question. Because if I was 20, I would say, well, I'm going to be the owner of multiple businesses. I'm going to be a billionaire. And then when I was 30, it would be like, I'm going to figure out how to take care of my kids and be happy. And then when I'm,
mm-hmm.
it's a moving target,
Absolutely. And that's why it's my
right?
favorite question because it brings people in the center now of like, what are you actively doing to set yourself up for the 10 years? Because life truly, at a young age, we're taught like, we need to control everything. We need to be able to have a plan, a 5 year plan, do this, do this, do this. Again, what society has taught us. And the work that you do with me, it's more of like, yes, you're taught all of these things, but letting life be fluid, knowing that in 10 years, whatever you're picturing for yourself is truly going to look different and accepting that it is going to look different.
I love that. I love that because what I've learned, and this is where this all fits into business and being a
Mhm.
self-employed professional. Now, you're a
Absolutely.
self-employed professional, and I've been a self-employed professional. And the way I define that is we're on our own.
Yes.
When you start a business, it's lonely. It's
Yes.
never what we think it's going to be.
Mhm.
People that have a job, they're like, oh, I want to be on my own. I want to have my own business. And then the shock sets in, right?
Mm.
Because now you need a website, you need an accountant, you need all these 50 different things, and they're all the top priority, right? So you need a starting point, right? And I read a book, and I'm sure that you know that it's called the Road Less Traveled by I
Mm.
forget his name. He's got one of these people with an initial as the first name, Dr. Peck. But I think in the introduction of the first chapter, he wrote something. He said, life is tough.
Mm.
Once you could accept that, you can be happy, right? And that
Yeah.
when I read that, I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant because life is tough. Business. So here's what I tell my clients, Sarah. Life is tough. And when you decide to start your own business, you just multiplied that by 100,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Am I
Uh-huh.
right? I mean, you're a
Absolutely.
business owner now. There's so many things. But if you could just sit down, I believe, sit down and relax and enjoy where you are
Mm,
and go with the flow, right? Go with the
yeah.
flow because it's
Abs-
not if something happens, it's when it happens and be prepared. So
mhm.
are you working with business owners or what type of people are you working with?
I'm working with people who are like high functioning, who are in relationships. They're the ones who put themselves in categories of being the fixers, the mediator, facilitators. They're everything to everybody, but truly let they show up and struggle in relationships for themselves. So that can be male, female. That's pretty much like my clientele that I'm working with right now. Is there any
Are
other
these
group?
like are these type A personalities?
Yeah. Yes, they are type A personalities.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, typical. So, it's funny because those are probably the people that need the most help, right?
Agreed. Mm,
And entrepreneurs, typically type A personalities because you don't get people that are shy starting businesses because those people that are shy, introverted, that don't know how to overcome the obstacles, they're out
mm,
of business very quickly.
mm,
They usually go back to their jobs because it's safer, it's more comfortable, right? But the
hmm
type A personalities, they look successful on the outside, right? They got everything together. And then they go
hmm
home and they're kicking the dog, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And that's why I asked you to be a guest on this show because I'm like, entrepreneurs, especially self-employed professionals, they think that they're the only ones going through this, right? Like
Mm,
it must be different for everyone else. Everyone else looks like they got everything together. And one of the things I learned, Tara, was one of the first steps in being successful is being humble and saying, you know what? I don't have it all together. I don't know everything. I need help,
yeah.
right? And that's where you come in.
Absolutely.
How do you decide? So, because you have so many ways, so many things that so many paths you could take people down. Like, how do you know? Like, it must be intuitive at this point because you've done it for so long. What do they call that? I forget what they call it. Like, you already know it so well, you think everybody else knows it.
Hmm.
Intuitive competence.
Okay.
Okay. So you're taking people like, let's say me, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
might be putting myself in a bad position. Yeah. But so how do you know? Do you put me through hypnotherapy? Do I do Reiki? I started learning about this Tai Chi stuff, like
Ooh,
is
okay.
all Eastern stuff, and I'm really, really interested in that. How do you know, like, what's going to be the best course of action for me?
Yeah, so because we've had like previous conversations, I can already get a feel of like how you work, how you communicate, how you show up for your clients. So for you, like we can do hypnosis, but I don't really think that's necessary for you. For you, I would focus more on EMDR. So thinking about any moments that kind of have like self-doubt, or if you're feeling like I'm not good enough or I'm not competent, and literally we wash that out of your system so that way you can continue showing up. Because what I'm seeing from you externally, you are truly aligned. You are in your passion. You are in your life purpose. Everything in your chakras, in terms of Reiki, you are pretty good. I think, I don't think that this script is written ahead of time. It looks like it's coming from the top of your head. So you have a skill and just like how your brain is working that your crown chakra specifically, you're golden. You're good. I wouldn't even touch it. I would say keep doing what you're doing. So I'd say whatever emotional reactivities that you're having, we can wash that out and it's only going to be in a few sessions and then you're going to continue doing great things. So in
Okay,
terms of like the other clients, it really is intuitive. So I pitch out all of the services that I do. Some people would be like, okay, at some point I want to try hypnosis. Okay, some point I want to try Reiki. No problem. I follow their lead, however, and if I'm seeing that there's some kind of disconnection or misalignment, then I'll offer it, kind of like slip it in a little bit, so that way they can kind of get a feel without fully committing to the whole process of Reiki, because sometimes people are just naturally nervous of what's new or what they haven't heard of before.
So yeah, I could tell you're really good because you hit the nail on the head with me. I've been doing this so long, and to be honest with you, I love, and I don't think love is a strong enough word. I love what I do. I don't work anymore. Sometimes I work when I got to like review tax returns and talk to my team about stuff. But for the most part, I love this. I don't get paid for doing these podcasts. I do it because I'm like, there's information that I feel like I have to share with people. But you
Mm.
mentioned something what is this EMDR therapy? Is that what you said?
Yes, it's eye
Explain
movement.
that to me because I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So that's an 8 phase process that really cleans up any of like the childhood stuff. So think about times where you felt like you got into an argument in your adult life. So when we trace it back to the memories, I'm unlovable, I'm not good enough, it's my fault, I'm a bad person. So all of those feelings kind of compound into like a snowball effect. That's why you still get triggered. So for the memory, it's like right in front of your face. For EMDR, it is allowing yourself to see the larger picture and have a better perspective so that way you're not triggered the next time an argument with your wife or your partner comes up. So it is
Wow.
a pretty strict dysregulating process, but it's a beautiful. There's so many benefits. These are lifelong changes. In the muck of it, I'll be completely honest, it can be hard to go through. So you got to be honest with yourself. But the end results, you truly do feel a difference.
I believe you. And I've never heard of that, but I definitely do believe that. But let's go down another path because
Yeah.
one of the things when like I said, 20 years ago, I'm 45, I'm making plenty of money, I got clients, I can't scale my business. That was one of the things I'm like, oh my God, I thought I was going to be the master of industry. I thought I was going to have all these businesses, and now I'm stuck as an accountant. Okay.
Mm,
How do I scale my business? Right before COVID hit, I had it. I was at one of those turning points. I had a series of big clients. I'd help them go from 3 million to 10 million, and then all of a sudden they'd become geniuses, and they started telling me what I should be doing. And I'm like, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So I made one of those decisions. I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm changing the kind of people that I want to work with. I don't like working with these people. I want to work with people that are struggling, people that don't normally hire accountants, but they don't hire accountants because usually they can't afford them, right? So I had to change my whole business model. And what I did at the time, and this was right before COVID, I hired a business coach. He was a friend of mine. He was a highly successful entrepreneur, former Green Beret, special ops Green Beret. And I thought he was going to have me like doing push-ups and running 10-mile marathons. No, you know what he had me do? He had me do this spider graph thing that he created, and it had to do with how are my relationships? Yeah, it had stuff like how are your finances, but it had like 10 different points, and you had to score them. Like my relationships, what else? My spirituality, all
mm,
these different things. I was like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me. But
mm,
that was a turning point. It changed my life because my relationships, I was like, they were like a two. They were a 2 out of 10. And just these little changes, like, okay, I don't have a great relationship with my kids. Maybe I should start calling them, right? My
mm,
aunt, start calling them. And these little changes wound up changing my business, right? Is that
mm.
amazing? So
That
some
is.
of these things you're saying, these type A personalities, have you had that? And I know what the answer is going to be. Have you had those kind of results?
Yes. Even for myself, yeah. Being an entrepreneur and in a relationship and like again, all these small little steps really do help and does change the business. It does bring back life and decreases the burnout. Absolutely.
Yeah, and the other thing you just said it. One thing, because as an entrepreneur, we're usually workaholics, right?
Yeah,
We just say, oh, like Elon Musk, he's like, yeah, just work 100 hours a week and you'll be ahead of every. Yeah, but you know how many relationships he's been through? He's like, yeah, you have a great business, you're a billionaire, but you're not happy, right?
exactly.
So it was
Mm.
the work-life balance. But the next thing, and then we're going to bring this home because this is important. I had to learn how to become a leader if I wanted to scale my business. And
Mhm.
what I learned from him, because I thought leaders were born, right? I said either
Same.
you're a leader or you're not. What he taught me was you can learn how to become a leader, right? So I immersed myself in leadership, how to become a leader. And it wasn't easy. It took me years. It literally took years of trial and error. Things like, and I'll give you an example, hiring people. I was terrible at it. I hated doing interviews, right? I would hire the first, second person that I interview and then forget about firing people. I didn't have it in my heart. Today, it's not even, I do it. I've learned that, listen, there's a line you got to draw, like accountability. Are you doing your job? It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. How do you suggest? So, how do people, and I know this is asking a lot, how do people, because I made the transition from being a solopreneur to a business owner. What kind of advice would you give people to make that jump, that transition? Because it's a big one.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say stick with concrete steps. Count to five, do the task. Don't allow the emotions to take over because that will be the thing that you start second guessing yourself, procrastinate, avoid, and literally put in the back burner. Create a concrete list of what things that you can do in that moment, maybe for like a half an hour. Count to five, do the task.
Oh my God, I mean, that's so brilliant, but it almost seems too easy,
You'd be
right?
surprised.
But
Yeah.
but so here's the thing, what I learned, it's not easy. It's
Yeah.
never, it's simple, right? You made
Yes.
it simple. And it is very simple. But that's the thing. It's like those little steps. You know, my friend who I really want to connect you with, his name is Vincent Lancy. He was literally left for dead. Okay, he was in his last semester of college. He got hit by a drunk driver. They told him they didn't know if he was going to live the night. He survived, and they said, "Oh, you might need 24/7 care." And now he's like, that was 2013. Now he's like, you wouldn't. It was called. He wrote a book called Left for Dead. Left for Dead, and now his the name of his business is Coming Alive.
Oh, wow. Very nice.
Yeah, it's amazing. But yeah, and he's an entrepreneur going through struggles. And the reason why I brought this up was he did a video. He sent me, he does a newsletter, and there was a video about how he went through his recovery. It was 3 minutes. But you know what he said? He said exactly what you just said. They were little steps, one little step at a time from, because if you're familiar with TBIs, it's like he woke up, he thought he was still in fifth grade. He was in elementary school, right? He
Mhm.
didn't, they asked him, where do you go to school? And he's like, Southwest Elementary School. Uh, So he had to relearn everything. And I told him, I said, Vincent, that's the entrepreneurial journey. It's one little step at a time. It's simple, but it's never easy. right?
Mhm.
So listen, this has been amazing. Probably have you on again because as I go through my journey, I'm like, oh, I got to get Tara on again to talk about this. Because, I don't know if I watched a movie called, I read a book called The Peaceful Warrior, and it's another one of those life-changing books. And I watched the movie. Nick Nolte, one of my favorite actors, was in it. And there was a scene in it where, he's coaching this kid, and I actually got to meet the kid. But anyway, he takes him up this mountain. He's like, "Listen, Dan, I think you're ready. I'm gonna take you to the answer." Like because the whole time this kid Dan Millman, and it was based on a true story. Millman kept saying, like, just tell me what's the secret? What's the secret? He's like, you're ready. And they're going up this mountain, right? And they're climbing, and Dan is all happy. And they get to the top, and he's like, okay, are you ready? And he's like, yeah. And Nick Nolte looks down, he picks up a rock, and he hands it to him. He's like, this is the secret. And Dan was all, you got to be kidding me. I climbed up this whole and Nick Nolte says, "Oh, well, you were happy on the whole way up here, right?" And that's
Mhm.
when it's the journey, right? It's the
Mhm.
journey.
Absolutely.
So, and you never get there. There is no there, right? There's no, okay, I made it now that, yeah. So if you're watching this, if you're listening, if you're an entrepreneur, I'm sorry to inform you, there is no there. Enjoy the journey, right, Tara?
Absolutely. Yes.
So I'd like to give you a chance to promote yourself. How do people contact you? Who are you looking to work with? How do they connect with you?
Sure. My business name is Innerlight Integrative Therapy. You can simply Google that name. If you like, you can also email me at info@healinginnerlight.com and just simply reach out, let me know what you're looking for, and we can have a consultation to see how we can best work with each other. That would be the quickest and easiest way. Like Joe said earlier in the show, I am pretty responsive. Just give me 24 hours to respond, but I'll certainly get back to you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. God bless. And
Thank
that's
you.
our story, folks. We're sticking with it. Over and out. If you like this show, like it, follow us. There's more to come. And like I said, like Tara said, it's the journey, folks. Thank you.